We get the books hopefully soon, and that's
You're never seeing the books.
so I want to talk
Everybody
about this part.
just accept it now. I know that this only makes you want to see it more. You're never going to see these books. I don't think you'll see the first one. If you do see the first one, there's no chance you see the second one.
So here's my points on this. I've been saying for a while, and I probably even texted it to Frank a while back, but I feel like he finished both books over the last couple of years. And I know that sounds ludicrous, and Jeremy, you're probably right, and I'm probably wrong.
There was a rumor,
but I've been saying this.
Claimed this, and Barristan Selmy claimed this at some panel, and he came out the next day and emphatically shot it down.
I believe there was an open bar before that panel, and someone got into the scotch, because how would a guy who got killed, while we were still in Marine, know anything about the books George R.R. Martin's writing?
I'm going to tell you how I believe that went down, and this is just hypothetical.
George called Barristan Selmy and said, "Hey man, I just want to tell you something no one else in the world knows."
Yeah. Hey, don't worry, bro. You're gonna make it to Westeros in my book.
But see, going back to that point, like, we can laugh about it, but we don't know if the actor behind Barristan Selmy and George Martin hit it off during one of those the script sessions.
No,
and maybe just hypothetically speaking, maybe George Martin did finish these books. Maybe he had them close to done before they signed the deal. And as they started to segue, maybe there was some politics behind who D&D thought should go which direction, and George was like, no, but didn't have the power because he had given the power over to these guys. I mean, I'm just saying maybe. I know it's unlikely.
Right.
But with Barristan Selmy coming out...
the case.
If that
was the case, he's got to... If he really did that, if that was actual... if that was something that was going to happen, he has to release them now within the next, 15 to 30 days, because otherwise you've got something else coming out. Something else that kind of runs over...
So now you look at... What if the scenario, and I know that Disney, and you were saying like you doubt that Disney would pay.
I just can't. Yeah,
you can't see it, but also think about the fact that Disney is one of the most powerful entities in the entire world, and they can kind of do whatever the hell they want.
But
they
Disney
do have the Mickey Mouse on the outside.
Right.
No, Disney benefits from getting their movies filmed, and they need D&D's full attention to do so.
No, but now Disney's got a major problem now. Everybody's like looking forward to, like, okay.
Yeah, but they didn't think that would be the end result. They didn't think that they didn't think that if we do this, if we talk behind closed doors and get these guys to rush it up a little bit so we can finish off and
they said,
can you get it done in 6?
Game of Thrones, and whatever you do what you have to do to make sure it's like just like a rushed, shitty ending.
Well, I guarantee you they didn't expect that. But then you have two guys who, did what they did, probably not thinking it was a rush, shitty ending. And
I don't know why. Why is it so hard to just to imagine that two guys did a bad job, that they tried, but they just didn't do a good job? Like, why is that hard to
Because
imagine?
money corrupts everything, and when you know...
It was an incredibly hard job, they just didn't do it well.
Yeah.
Joey Joe.
Trust me.
They just didn't do it well. I'm sure they tried.
Right.
There's it's not even just these two guys. There's like 5,000 people behind the scenes working on this show. Do you think that all these people whose careers depend on it would have been like, hey, let's let these two assholes completely ruin the show? No way. Like, they tried. It was just really, really hard, and they didn't get it right.
Here's the other issue with that when you think about it. Star Wars has already gotten into trouble with internet and fandom as it relates to, you've got Solo and you've got Rogue One, and nobody liked, except for me and Jeremy apparently, nobody liked Last Jedi, So they've already got this thing where they know that the internet is going to pounce on whatever they put out there. And now you add the two Ds to their next trilogy.
They're fucked.
You've got a ready-made mob ready to burn down the mouth.
Yeah, but you guys
They're
have to remember...
already writing the memes.
You're right.
You have to remember two things, though. One, it was only 4 weeks ago everyone loved these two guys. I mean, there was nothing bad about these two guys 4 weeks ago. Two, the filming, the cinematography, the acting, all that put together in front of a bunch of rich, panel members at Disney, they're going to be completely satisfied with what they see. The HBO people were probably pretty satisfied with what they saw. It's just when you have people who are invested their time and money or their time and life into these stories, they're conjuring an expectation, and maybe they shouldn't, but they did.
I don't think I mean, this is a huge outcry from the fandom over the last 6 weeks or whatever. But the Dorn subplot, they got a lot of grief for. There was stuff throughout the last few years where it's been like, has this show lost its fastball? And I think, I think this is obviously the culmination of it, where everybody gets on their computer and says, "I can't believe I wasted 10 years." I mean, calm down, Chief.
That's a little bit much. That's ridiculous.
You weren't going to do anything else. What? Were you going to watch another episode of Big Bang Theory? Calm down.
Well, I absolutely agree.
Big Bang Theory's the shit, though.
I have some comments on that I'll save for another podcast. But just to go back and to touch on, I will not fault the acting at all. These guys acted the hell out of this thing. They did the best that they could possibly do with what they were given. But as again, coming from a fan who
except Brand.
Although he held that wheelchair down pretty damn good though.
He did. Brand, the actor. The actor behind Brand, real quick, Jerry, he said that it wasn't very hard to do what he had to do because they said, just look mystified. And he said, well, when he takes his glasses off, he's completely blind. So all he did was sit there and try to focus on the camera or the people. And that's how he did what he did.
Yeah, he's a pretty terrible actor.
I guess it worked for him. But yeah, from this fan standpoint, the acting's spot on. But I think just what D&D did with it in the end is they just these gaps. I mean, fans wanted more, right? If I'm talking about specific little things that just kind of leave me a little bit scarred. It's kind of like the way that Jaime and Cersei went out, the way that Daenerys went out. It's not that I hadn't made my peace with the fact that maybe these folks would die, but let's go to Jaime Lannister for a second. Here's a guy who, from the moment he pushed Bran out the window, his story, his character arc has been about redemption. And you follow him through this entire story. And you're like, yeah, he's going to probably do some really cool redeeming thing at the end. He's going to leave Brienne there crying, and he's going to go take care of Cersei before anybody else gets to her. This is going to be an awesome ending. Let me see how this plays out. And instead, he ran back literally to be her lapdog so, she can die in his arms as the bricks fall on it. And that seemed to be too good. I don't know if the show just made me bloodthirsty. It seemed like too good of an ending for Cersei to go out where she felt loved. I wanted blood. I wanted more. I think a lot of the fans wanted more. The way Daenerys went out, who knows how that was, what people wanted there. I'm thinking that there might have been some blood and gore, some surprise, it was Jon just plunging one right into her heart and ending it, and it kind of just felt so anticlimactic, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I expected more, and I think that's kind of the sentiment that a lot of fans were left with. I think I read a number today that 60% of the fans, 60% were disappointed with the way it ended, and maybe it's just because of that. Maybe they just expected a little bit more.
But you're right. So in the Daenerys and Jon scene, again, I think that they acted very well. They did what they were asked for, but I never was truly in the ballpark of feeling like these two characters loved each other, like when Jon and Ygritte had their moment. And
they had terrible chemistry. Those two actors, they never sold it, and it was hard. It's hard. You can as a consumer of television and movies, you can tell when two actors don't have that spark, and it's hard to sell a love.
Yeah.
But I will say this, Frank. I will say this. How much of that is also, our own subconscious, because we know, hey, he's doing his auntie. I mean, there's that taboo piece that doesn't let our
exactly.
mind do that.
I've seen a lot of sex scenes, and you can always tell when a guy is doing his aunt.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So,
hey man, even though Game of Thrones is over, though, we need to really talk about what's going to happen July 4th. Get up on that Stranger Thing.
Oh boy, Stranger Things. I kind of died down a little bit though.
If you watch your mouth, Kevin, I'll go over the floor and I'll kick your ass.
So I want to touch base.
Tree in the front yard, son.
I know you will. I know you will soon, man. But I told you, you're coming here. You're buying a PSVR. Before you leave.
Well, I'm coming there in June. I'm kicking you right dead in the ass because you said that. That's rude, bro.
Yeah, for you guys who are joining the call, one of the things on the podcast that Joe and I, I've been trying to get him to buy a PSVR so that we can, because I get a lot of developers from the VR world reaching out, and I get to play these games. And Joe is a collector of video games. He goes out and buys old Game Boys, and he'll buy 4 of them before he buys a PlayStation VR, and he never is opening these Game Boys. These are collectibles. And so I told him when he comes here, he's either buying a VR or I'm going to buy a gun and just put it in his mouth until he does. He's coming to visit, and I'm going to hold him down. I'm going to make sure he buys that PlayStation VR. I know it's a little extreme, but that's how serious I take it. And so he's still coming.
He got real serious.
Yeah. So, but all joking aside, I want to jump back real quick on the topic of, are the books done? And I know that, and try to take emotion out of this for a second. I just want to put out the reason and the potential and the potential outcomes. So there's either he's not done. He's still conflicted with some of the storylines. He's having a hard time writing, and we know how complicated Martin's stories are. We've talked quite a bit today about how some of these characters just don't even exist in the books or in the show, and they're dead in the show, and they're not dead in the books. And you got George, who's obviously dedicated to keeping a continuity in his books. And he's probably been involved in writing some of these episodes or participating in the development of some of these episodes. That's got to be tough for his mind, as pinpoint as he's got to be with all of his characters and all of his stories and all of his history, to see things differently played out on a visual aspect. So maybe that's the case. Maybe he's not done, and it's even harder now to write his books than it was before because he's got a visual aspect to put it. The characters that are on the TV point. Look different than the ones that in his mind. He's even saying that the closest one is Tyrion, but Tyrion doesn't look anything like he's supposed to. Well, to all of us watching the show, he looks perfect for the character, but he sees Tyrion as this monster, as his face is all jacked up, he's missing a nose, and now he sees Tyrion as Peter Dinklage. So writing as Tyrion and not Peter Dinklage has got to be a little bit different for him. I'm sure it is. Now, on the other side,
that's a good point.
On the other side, I don't believe that HBO would have gotten in bed with him if they didn't have full commitment that they'd have what they needed. And so there had to have been a point where he was close to finishing that book, the Winds of Winter. And so if just saying hypothetically, if he was close to finishing Winds of Winter at the debut of the season 1, and began writing Dreams of Spring at that point, then timing-wise, and even George Martin timing-wise, 10 years later, he could deliver both of those books. Now, Barristan Selmy, the actor behind him, maybe he knows more than we do. Maybe he's talking out his ass. He seemed to be pretty confident, like he knew something, and I just go by gut feeling. I used to be a bartender, and you can kind of tell when some people are talking serious and some people aren't.
Well, there you have it.
No, I'm just saying, my gut feeling was that guy had some information, and I have no reason to believe George Martin. Yes, he was emphatic about it, but that's because he could probably be sued if they knew he did
exactly.
some back.
Did you read his reasons why?
Yes, but I don't know George Martin, and I have no idea if he was handed $1 million cash to do what he did to keep his mouth shut, and then maybe he's the one who got drunk and told Barristan Selmy, I finished the fucking books. These guys are, doing whatever they want. I got $1 million out of it. And then next thing you know, Barristan Selmy's up there on a panel at some conference overseas saying, yeah, he's fucking done. And then he's like, wait, what the hell are you talking about? I could be sued into oblivion. So the next day he wrote this long post. I'm not even close to done. I'm not done at all. What is he talking about? The internet's crazy. I had to, no way, because there's millions of dollars at stake here. Yeah, there is. So if he truly did make some side deal with those two, and he truly did do a backdoor thing, he could be on the line for a lot of trouble, and so...
how would he hide that if he all of a sudden published the 2 books in the next 30 days?
Well, I never thought that he would publish the books in the next 30 days. I figure
so he still has to publish one and then wait 10 years and publish the other one in order for it to not look like a big thing.
No, because before Barristan Selmy said that, he could have published one by winter and said it's finally done. And then by winter we have the winter, and then next spring he could have published the next one and said, I've been working on both of them. They're, it's ready. But if Barristan Selmy had never have said that, you wouldn't have thought anything differently.
There's too much precedent for that. He was already, remember when Feast for Crows came out? The whole thing was, sorry Feast for Crows took so long, but I've actually been working on both of them at the same time. Half the characters aren't in this book, but you'll see them in A Dance with Dragons, in 10 years.
Okay, so when was Dance with Dragons released?
So
this is where your timing is off. He wasn't working on Winds of Winter when the show started. He was still writing Dance with Dragons.
Dance with Dragons comes out 2011. Feast for Crows comes out 2005.
Okay, and the show started 2011.
Show premieres in 2000. So Dance with Dragons is released July 17th, 2011. And I don't have this off the top of my head. I am on a wiki of Fire and Ice. So, I don't get sued for... And let's see. I think the show premiered wasn't it around the summertime of 2011? Let me look.
So it takes a few months to publish and process the books. When he does start the publishing process, there is 0% chance he can keep that under wraps. So we'll know.
Season 1 premieres April 17th, 2011. So season 1 premieres before Dance with Dragons comes out.
That's right.
Well, fair enough. I mean, I think it's just a potential outcome. I know that there's, me, Jer. It's more of a what if type of situation.
If there's a conspiracy out there, we'll theorize about it.
Right. And if it does happen, Amazon will have the biggest sale day ever.
Yeah. I just don't accept everything I'm told cut and dry, and I don't think there's a problem with that. Personally, a lot of people do seem to have a problem with that aspect, but in the world of...
Unless Garrison Selby says it.
Right.
And you're accepting it. Cut and dry.
I didn't accept it cut and dry. I started this off by saying I don't necessarily believe this is true, but I think it's an option. It's on the table. But because
Speaking
it's on the table...
unanswered questions, who's paying the Iron Bank?
Yeah.
Oh, forget it.
Braun probably owns it.
Yeah.
Are we just writing it off?
Because Braun's really good with money. That's one thing they've always made a point of talking about.
Right.
Oh, we know he's up for funding brothels, so, the man's got a good head on his shoulders,
Yeah, they picked the right guy right there for that job, straight off the bat.
Middle finger.
Well, I guess if he's Lord of Highgarden, just by default, he's got the cash flow.
But we were talking a little bit before, too, like, why would they have gone through with that? And all they had to do was have Tyrion say, Lannister always pays his debts. I don't like it, but I'm giving you the keys to Highgarden. And then, Bran would say, you were always meant to have the keys to Highgarden.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I think that would have been gratuitous. I mean, as soon as they said Lord Braun of Highgarden, I think you got the picture. I don't think they needed a separate
I guess,
scene
but how many times do you have to
to
do that in a season? How many times do you have to get the picture yourself? That's what the problem was with every little thing was cut into black as opposed to explaining what the hell's going on. They had Tyrion get hit in the face with a pole from a boat, and the next scene, they're 1.5 miles crawling on shore.
Okay.
And, these moments of like, we're just going to cut it and let you, leave it to your interpretation of what happened. They did that way too much. And as a viewer,
that's the difference between television and novels.
I did see the leaks. Unfortunately, there was a post on Reddit that spelled out the leaks as if it was a joke. Like, here's what I think is going to happen. And they were word for word. And then that, it pretty much found out that once you started watching episode 5, you were like, well, fuck, that was real. Okay. And even at the end of it, it was like, yeah. And then, Bran is the king of the North, or the king of everything, and blah, blah, blah. And so once you realized that what you had read was legit, but I think personally, I'm comfortable. I was never afraid of seeing leaks. I know, Jeremy, you didn't want to. You rewatched the whole entire thing.
That's why I have not logged on to Reddit in 7 years.
But so when you're...
And last night, it paid off.
Hold on 1 second. I can't hear you. I have to fix my mics. Say that again?
I said I have not logged on to Reddit in 7 years, and thankfully last night it all paid off because I did not know Bran was going to be the king.
So with that, though, like, when you were watching the show, and this is for all of you except for Jerry because you didn't read the books, but when you were watching the show, when you knew what was going to happen, was it less exciting?
No,
it was great, right? When you knew the Red Wedding was happening?
So
no, it was bad. It was just as good.
Yeah,
just
I
as
told
good.
you
Okay.
in the beginning that I didn't read the books until after Ned's head got cut off, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I am not going to be surprised by another thing. And it was fun knowing that. Now, of course, it's a little different in the book when Robb decides to go to the twins and all that. He doesn't bring his wife with him, but the whole idea that Robb is going in and it's going to not go well for him, that was exciting, especially watching with people who were unsullied, who hadn't read the books,
Yes.
So yeah, I was, and that's why when you get to the end of the book source material and everybody is unsullied, you're like, oh man, what's going to go wrong? What's going to happen? It's that feeling of dread. I hate Christmas because I don't want to be surprised.
Yeah, I'm okay with I like feeling surprised.
Wait, can we talk about what he just said?
Sure.
What?
Listen,
Wait, go back.
I ruined Christmas for my sister 2 years in a row at when we were kids because my parents had the same hiding spot. One Christmas, I named every present she got. The year after that, my dad wrapped every present before he hid them, so it made it much harder.
But you hate Christmas.
Hate's a strong term. There's
just because you don't like surprises.
Well, there's also a lot of decorating that goes on at this house if you're not aware. So Christmas starts around Veterans Day.
All right, sorry, I had to delve into that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. So,
Kevin, I will say this as somebody who watches a ton of television and dissects it and thinks about it too much, and somebody who watched the first couple, the first 4.5 seasons, I'd say, really kind of comparing what I was seeing versus the way it was being done, in the book versus on the show, what was different, what was the same. And I really feel I should write them all down because I feel like I could make some predictions about what will be different in the books versus what we saw in these shows.
I'd be interested to
and
we can talk about that.
Some of it's major plot points, but some of it is just more about emphasis. Because when you're writing for television and when you're, the fan service that goes on, that's really necessary in television writing isn't the same when you're writing novels. And I think there's certain stuff that ended up kind of developing a life of its own, whether it was because of the on-screen chemistry that two actors had, or fans just reacting and liking something or not liking something, or just the need to have a plot twist. And this person's going to get killed off today because we're 3 episodes without a plot twist, and so we need one because that's the formula for television. I think it's going to be really interesting to see these books because even if some of these major, touchstone plot points along the way are going to be, where the arc goes, so to speak, I think you're going to see a different story. I think it's going to feel a lot different.
Yeah, and Martin's even said that there's a lot of different pieces to the puzzle. I think, like Frank was saying at the very beginning, and he made a lot of good points on the different plot points and the key things. The last council there that we saw is probably going to be very similar, if not identical, to what the book is. The final scene, whether it's where it was at or not, some of those things will happen exactly as they played out in the show. But yeah, how people got there, as we know in the books, people are in different places. There's different characters. So I'm super interested to see the storylines of like Lady Stoneheart and Arya's true character arc in the books and Jaime's true character arcs in the books. Some of these things that I really think, I don't know if they were mishandled. They're just handled differently than I would have expected those characters to do in the show.
Of all the things, I think that the one thing you'll be disappointed in is Jaime, because I hear everybody has the same opinion that they wasted this whole character arc, and yet to me, of all the things that I saw, I think that's one thing that felt to me exactly the way it'll go down in the book, because that's George Martin for you there. Make you believe that a character can be redeemed, take the ultimate bad guy of the book, make you love him, and then remind you that everybody lets you down. I mean, that's really all his ultimate goal all the time.
But I think there's a little substance lacking in the believability of how that went down. And again, we talk about it a lot, but timing and time could have been, a contributing factor into believing that a little bit more. That when he left Brienne, because the Brienne situation was so believable, and the reason it was believable was because of the chemistry of the two on-screen actors, especially during the seasons when he got his arm cut off. She had to fight a bear. I mean, some of that stuff was just mesmerizing to see these two play out. You felt that bond happen as it was created, and So you believed that this character Jamie could, and I get what your point is saying about how Martin pulls that one out from underneath of you, and I totally buy that too. That's a valid pathway for Jamie, but the way the show presented it, it didn't seem very valid. It seemed like he was well done with Cersei when he was going back north to Winterfell to fight the dead, and that was a commitment much deeper than his love for Cersei because he knew he was going to die. The fact that he didn't die and still had Brienne there to be able to show his emotions for wasn't a redeeming and impactful series of events. And then it was just like, all right, we're just going to throw that all away in the show because he heard Cersei's in trouble. But he knew Cersei was in trouble. He knew Cersei was in trouble the whole time in the show. And so some time or a little bit of extra dialogue or just a little bit more. I don't know what it is exactly. I'm not the writer, but I just know that there was something.
Think the thing that's going to be different when Martin writes it is going to be all the stuff before that final decision, that all the good guy stuff. Yeah. I think that when he's writing that from Jamie's perspective and you're seeing inner dialogue of his character, I think you're going to know that he's still at heart an evil guy. And I mean, that's who he is. In the end, he's true to that.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about Martin, though, I mean this guy, the one underlying thing that you can pretty much guarantee with him is the way that he writes these stories. There is no good or bad with a lot of these characters, right? They can each be a little of both. As you go through the story, that's one thing that's depending on the day, depending on the perspective that he's telling the story from. I mean, you can see the good and the evil in both of them. But can I just take a minute though and just really kind of applaud Jaime Lannister? I mean, this guy's Kingslayer game was like so hard. That you think about it, he tried to kill the king 8 seasons ago when he pushed him out a window. So yeah, one time for Jaime Lannister, man. That guy, that guy is something else.
That's the first person I've heard point that out, and that's good, brilliant.
Yeah, that's a good line.
So I wanted to, well, Frank, if you want to say something before I segue to the next part, go ahead.
The only thing I was going to add, since we're talking about Jaime, who's probably one of the best characters in both the show and the books, and the deepest character. I found it funny that when Bran added to his story, knowing that now that everything's out in the open, knowing that he saved King's Landing from the Mad King, and of course, we didn't get a lot of time in there. We didn't get all the time in the book, but I felt like she should have added that he saved King's Landing by killing the Mad King,
yes.
So that way.
That's what I was looking for.
That way, from as long as we have the Book of Brothers, as long as we have the King's Guard, they will always know that Jaime Lannister was an honorable man, regardless of him coming back to save Cersei and all that. The idea that King's Landing was saved because he didn't let the Mad King use wildfire. I thought that would have been a nice little addition there to kind of remind us that, yeah, he is a deep character, but he did have the people's safety at heart, at least a little bit.
Yeah, but I think the disappointing part there is that, again, number one, the fact that this was a guy who was being redeemed the whole story, and then just to have it kind of yanked out from under at the end. But, again, there seems to be just some things missing, and I guess there's still a bit of an unfulfilling end there because, here you go back to, to save a sister who, just, hired a cutthroat to take you and your brother out, but you're going to go running back to her again, like the lapdog. And it kind of takes, I think, a little something away from his character. Like, at some point you wanted to stand up and see him just be the man, complete the character arc, and go out there and, finish her off yourself. I mean, that would have been that tough love moment where, I still, have feelings for my sister, but let me just go ahead and take you out before they do.
We may
there would have been a little bit more honor in that.
What you see with the Dany Jon scenario at the end, that may be the Jaime Cersei ending. That specific style of, I'm here to save you, I love you, but I'm going to put a knife in you because I know it's the right thing to do. That might be because in the books there's always this prophecy, and I know that not all the prophecies in the books make their way to fruition, but there's a lot of heaviness on the prophecy of Cersei, and all of them come true except for the fact that Jaime kills her, or Tyrion. It's supposed to be her brother that kills her, and a lot of people thought that they were going to die together. Well, they did die together, but that prophecy was nowhere to be found unless you consider that Jaime made her go down those steps and get crushed alive and didn't let her move 5 steps to the left or right because, as you see
That's all
Tyrion
it
walk
was.
up to the pile, that's all he had. All they had to do was, avoid the falling rocks above him. But I wanted to kind of, because we're getting a little long here, and I just want to give a chance for everyone to speak about one or two of their favorite actors and why they were your favorite actors. I don't want to limit it to one because there was a lot, but I don't want to go more than 2. So I want to start with Frank, and I want to hear who were your favorites and what did you take away from them, and what do you look forward to in them in the future?
Wow, man, you really put me on the spot being the
I
first
know.
guy.
But you're the one with notes. You got notes, so.
How'd you know I had notes? Did Lisa send you a picture?
No, I can hear every once in a while. I hear a page turn.
Okay, so yeah, I wasn't prepared for this. So this is a hard one. Like what I've realized over the last couple of weeks is my favorite actors are the background guys. I wasn't a fan of John.
Hold on 1 second, Frank.
Stannis'
Hey, Frank,
What's
hold on
that?
1 second. I hear some dishes or something in the background. I'm not sure if it's Jeremy or Jerry. Just if you could mute while he's talking. Sorry about that. All right, go ahead.
No worries. So what I was saying was what I've discovered as I've kind of gone along this year, that the background, the secondary characters, the secondary actors are probably my favorites. So I'm a big fan of Sir Davos. I thought, this is a guy who comes out of Flea Bottom. The actor portrayed him, great. I thought he did a really good job of showing this guy who comes from nowhere, but has a good head on his shoulders. He lets Shireen teach him to read. He follows Stannis until he realizes that Stannis has probably gone off the deep end a little bit, and then realizes maybe Jon's the guy. So I was a big fan of Davos. I think probably, as weird as it sounds, since now he's the Lord of Highgarden and the Master of Coin, Jerome Flynn was a great secondary actor. Every time he was on scene, up until the crossbow threat at the inn, you knew you were going to get something funny. You knew you're going to watch him do something. I thought he did a really good job. Obviously Jamie and Nikolai, as with Nikolai, probably the best. I don't know that he'll get Emmy nomination or Emmy nominations or anything like that, but I thought he did throughout the series, he was in every season, and he had a really good arc up until the end. I really enjoyed watching him perform.
So I'm going to throw another curveball at you and let everyone else speak about it. But who was your favorite duo set? Because they did a lot of duo journeys.
So this is easy. So give me a comedy 3-year run of the Hound and Arya running through the Riverlands. As long as the Hound can get chicken and Arya can stab people in the throat, I'm watching every episode. The Hound, I thought he had probably, his death was great last episode. I really liked, how he kind of came around in the end, but he was still true to himself. But I liked the Hound and Arya. I would watch them. I liked when they got back together. It was probably the most exciting part of me for the first few episodes. I was like, God, when is it going to be the Hound and Arya? When's it going to be the Hound and Arya? So that's who I was happy to see back.
Those are all awesome mentions of characters. Okay, so next I'm going to turn to Jerry. Jerry, who was your favorite or favorites? And after that, the duo. And you can have repeat characters. It's okay.
Yeah, so I'll approach this from two different angles. First off, from just a character perspective, the Hound was my absolute favorite because, can we just agree that I don't think I can recall in recent memory a character who was just so direct, blunt, and fearless. As far as what came out of his mouth, he just didn't give a shit. And you always, you were just kind of always sitting there just waiting to see, what's he going to say next? What's he going to say? And I love that about him. There was just never any pulling any punches with him. But from not necessarily a character standpoint, but from, an actor or actress standpoint, personally, I learned a lot about Emilia Clarke's personal struggles, with the aneurysm that she had. And I think, definitely we can all agree that she absolutely acted the hell out of this entire series. But to learn what she went through personally with the aneurysm, the fact that there was one point she, I think, was it between seasons 1 and 2 or something like that, she couldn't even remember her name. And yet she, underwent, like, I think by the time it was all said and done, 3 surgeries on her brain. She was just fatigued. She was in pain. And she powered through this thing, and a lot of people didn't know anything about it until, coming up here near the end. But just hats off to her for really just going through something that kind of had her at the brink of death. And she just continued on with this show to help, push it along and make it what it was for all of us. So, I think a lot of the fans and definitely the show owe her a debt of gratitude for really just sucking it up beyond any reasonable expectation for what somebody in her position was going through, and really kind of just delivering.
Well said.
Fantastic on her part.
And
as far as a duo, again, I'm sticking with the Hound and Tormund Giantsbane. These two together is it's comedy gold. Putting them together, and just the Hound and his way, and I can listen to that scene, Tormund telling about the giant's milk, again and again. It was just phenomenal stuff. The two of those guys together deserve their own show.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremy, what are you thinking?
Listen, you don't want to hear my damn dishes. I got to put you on mute. Okay.
I'm sorry. No, it's okay. I just was.
And then I can't figure this out because I'm very adept at Facebook chat, as it turns out. All right. I think that this is a great point because the acting. This is exactly what I was saying before. Like these side characters, all these people that these guys are pointing out. I can't imagine that Tormund is the last person you will see, or the last person that's going to be written about in the final scene of Martin's book. But there he was in the final scene of Game of Thrones riding off with Jon. And the reason that happened is because they had an actor who was killing the role. And in television, when you get a performance like that, you go with it. Same thing with the importance of Brienne. I mean, like Frank, people can tell you this, right? All of us who read the books. What did people who read the books think of Brienne before the show started?
Annoying.
She was the most hated character in the books. Yep. Now, Brienne's got to be sitting at the small council to pick the king. I guarantee. I can't guarantee it because maybe he likes it, but I guarantee when they started the show, that wasn't in Martin's plan to have Brienne in that scene at the end of the book. I just can't imagine that. But Davos, same thing. What's he doing there at the end? He's there because he's killing it as an actor, and so you keep putting him in all these scenes because you know that he can he can carry these scenes like glue for all the other actors who are saying the important lines, and he's just acting glue. So these guys all did amazing jobs. I think the acting on the show was so top notch that really outside of Bran, who I just think is a terrible actor, and there's no way they could have predicted that when they hired a 4-year-old to start playing that character. But he turned out to be really shitty, and that's that. But other than that, I mean, I think Arya's great. I think that we know that Sansa can act because we see her in other things now, and she's actually pretty okay. If I had to pick MVPs, then I'd say out of the entire series, really anybody with the last name Lannister. I mean, Cersei. I think Cersei's acting in this show is probably the best acting I've seen, in the last couple of years. She delivers every single line like Perfect. It's something you want to put on a T-shirt. It's just unbelievable. And don't forget Tywin. I mean, he's been dead a couple of years now. I mean, we already knew that guy was an amazing actor before this show, but let's not forget how effing good he was.
Yeah, I'm looking through the cast right now, and his face just popped up right before you said that, and I was like, damn, what a solid performance for him, and the portrayal that Charles Dance did of Tywin was like,
oh my god!
And that's why I talk about
hitting it. I mean, everything I expected from that character after reading the books. I mean, he popped right out of the page and came to life on that screen. I mean, it was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tywin's introduction. He's there gutting the stag and just giving a master class on legacy and how you should behave. I mean, that's when you knew, well, this guy is definitely, like you said, the character that came from the books, Charles Dance just translated him perfectly.
Yeah. So, Joe, I know you've been listening in the background. I think you're still there. Let me check and see. Nope, he's gone. I was going to ask him who his favorite character on How I Met Your Mother was, but
Yeah.
he didn't stick around. Joe doesn't watch Game of Thrones.
How I Met Your Mother.
Wow. Hey, I think he might have taken offense to the third. What show just ended on
Third Rock
CBS?
from the Sun. Yeah, Third Rock. You got it.
No, the other one. The other.
That's what it was. The How I Met Your Mother, right?
Big Bang
Big
just
Bang.
ended.
Oh shit!
That's
Oh,
right.
okay.
He did take exception to the comment by Kevin on Stranger Things. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I like Stranger
But I
Things.
didn't
I couldn't get into season 2. But anyways, go ahead, Frank.
No. I was just busting balls.
So
I did want to touch on one thing real quick, Kevin, before we went
go
on.
ahead.
Just something you called out at the top of this podcast. One of those things was Sam kind of getting laughed back into his seat when he mentioned a democracy, and you said that they ended up doing that anyway. But I think it really wasn't. I think he was talking more about a democracy from the standpoint of let the people choose. What it ended up being was more or less like an electoral college, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of the
Yeah,
people
that's true.
on
That's
on
true.
the panel.
Yeah.
But the other thing is we definitely we can't say enough about the whole time warp, time travel kind of thing, or what was with Grey Worm ending up at the top of the stairs before Jon Snow got there. There really is no excuse for that. How that happens, I don't know. But you got to cut Arya some slack. She got there too. But then this is a girl with no face. She could have been anyone and everyone getting her way up to
good
Jon's
point.
side, and we wouldn't have seen. We can cut her a little slack, but the Grey Worm thing, how he just ended up there. After
It's just a
Jon left
cutting.
him behind to cut some throats. There's just no real excuse for that.
Absolutely fair enough. So what I want to do is I'm gonna wrap up the talk here and then dip over to the last thing we'll talk about is just what are you hoping for next. So think about that while I run down. I want to give some credit to pretty much all these characters real quick. You kind of all did, so I don't need to dive too deep, but I'm just gonna look at IMDb and go down the list. I mean, Peter Dinklage portrayed Tyrion Lannister phenomenally. He had to go through quite a bit of dealing with being hated and loved, and he became a fan favorite pretty instantly. He appeared in more episodes than any other character in the show, and I think it's pretty well known that he's one of the most beloved characters by George Martin. Martin himself has said that Peter Dinklage played the character of Tyrion better than anyone else played their own character, not to take away from anybody else, but that Tyrion absolutely killed it. So from a writing perspective and someone handling the character like they were supposed to, and someone who, if you've read the books, you pictured Tyrion, I think personally just you couldn't have picked somebody better than Peter Dinklage. And, I guess it's hindsight's 2020, but he did the job he was supposed to do all the way down to the bitter end. And even though it may have felt out of place or interesting or questionable or whatever, that last speech he gave where Grey Worm had him cuffed and told him he wasn't allowed to talk, and then he just changes the world, it was a believable, heartfelt thing. And if you really think about some of the pathways that Tyrion took, he changed a lot of things. The character himself overcame a lot of arcs, especially with his Tywin hating him and Cersei hating him, and he had an unbelievable scene with Jaime when he freed Jaime, just so believable, and Peter Dinklage absolutely knocked that out of the park. Jeremy already said it, but Lena Headey did a phenomenal job as Cersei. I don't need to go into that too much more, but like Jeremy said, she just delivered every line so crisp. And one of the things I noticed about her as a human is she's not that big. She's very short and, just like a, I don't know, if you look at her Instagram, she's just a fun, crazy girl. But in the show, you really do see this empress, this queen, and she's so elegant and believable. So Lena Headey is a phenomenal Cersei Lannister. And Emilia Clarke, Jerry, you said it, you hit the nail right on the head. She went through a lot of personal traumas and things along the way, but she still killed it. We can laugh at her facial expressions and stuff online and whatnot, but when she was turning and changing, the bells were going. You could read every piece of the dialogue that was going on in her mind, and there was no dialogue there to read. So she just, every season she played her part very well. And again, I'm going to say it a lot, but couldn't have picked a better person. I mean, Daenerys in the books was this beautiful silver-haired girl who, when you saw who they picked for it, it maybe you raised your eyebrows and said, I don't know, but by the end of it, there is nobody else to be Daenerys Targaryen. And same with Jon Snow. Kit Harington, he's going to be a superstar. I think it's pretty obvious that that he's not going to stop doing what he's doing, and he is exactly what I pictured a Jon Snow to be, all the way down to the end. I mean, his facial expressions, his wardrobe, his humor, everything. It was perfect. You get into the other Starks and Sansa and Arya, Jaime Lannister. They all killed their parts. They all did really, really good jobs. Ian Glenn as Jorah Mormont was, I mean, good Lord, like you felt the bro, what is it? He really wanted Daenerys, but he just wasn't getting her. He was the friend. And
I got friend zoned.
Friend zone, that's the word. And it was like that guy.
I think they call that like creepy old uncle zone.
Yeah, exactly. Considering his age compared to her.
But I mean, I believed that Ian Glenn was in love with Emilia Clarke by the end of it. You know what I mean? It was just so well done, and he killed it. John Bradley as Samwell Tarly was, again, when you're reading the books and you see these characters, and then you get the guy. This was his first role ever, and Samwell Tarly. So now he's got this foundation and a future ahead of him. You're going to see John Bradley in a ton of things. He delivers what he's supposed to deliver, how he's supposed to deliver it. But if you see him in person or in a talk show, he's not Samwell Tarly. He's a, pretty cool, easygoing guy. But he plays Samwell Tarly exactly like you'd hope he would. Lord Varys, oh my God, like the character in the books is someone who has so much interestingness, or you want to know more. And what's his name? Connolith Hill just absolutely played that character to a T. I mean, just you couldn't imagine somebody else. Liam Cunningham with Davos, Gwendolyn Christie with Brienne of Tarth, Isaac Hampstead Wright, Jeremy. Yeah, you're right. Bran Stark. How if he was 4 when he started, how could you expect every single one of these people to nail it? Rory McCann as the Hound was. Jerry, you hit that one on the head. He was one of my favorites, and absolutely every scene that he was in was something I was interested in. When he died originally, and we weren't sure if he was coming back, because in the books we don't know. There was always a hint that he would be the guy working in the graveyard or whatever. But it was sad. I really didn't want to lose him as a character, and even when he died killing his brother, I was like, man, we're not going to get him in the last episode, and I really wanted him. Jerome Flynn, Frank, you nailed that one too. Bronn was awesome. And even, so Daniel Portman was Podrick Payne, and Jacob Anderson, Grey Worm. They all hit their characters perfectly. Christopher Hivju was Tormund. Who's Edison Tollett? What character?
Where did he talk? Dolores Ed?
Oh, Dolores Ed. Jeez, man. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So Ben Crompton as
how could you forget?
Well, I never heard him as Edison. It's just Dolores Ed.
Right.
Then we got if you think back to Grandmaster Pycelle and the guy who played Pycelle, Julian Glover. Pycelle was like unbelievably portrayed in the show. Exactly what I expected. And Charles Dance, Melisandre. I know I'm just reading off a list, and it's very easy for people to do, but I'm just pointing out, like, every single person, save for Isaac Hampstead Wright, just killed it. All the way down to Gilly, and Hannah Murray as Gilly, right? But there's a couple people that I missed. And so I'm going to dip into my favorite actor on the whole show was Missandei.
What?
I'm just kidding. But no, even she played her part very well. I skipped over on purpose. I have to think back to last season when we lost Baelish, Littlefinger, Peter Baelish, and Aidan Gillen.
God, what a good point.
Was the man of 1,000 accents.
Oh man, he was absolutely Littlefinger. And coming from The Wire, I think I watched The Wire before I watched any Game of Thrones, and it was like the last thing I watched before I got into Game of Thrones. And I remember like the first season going, oh my God, it's so weird seeing whatever, I forget his name.
Carcetti.
Yeah, Carcetti as this as this lord in this mystical world, and now I can't even remember Carcetti, and it's like, holy shit, did he play Peter Baelish perfectly throughout every season? And you always wondered, how far is he gonna go? Is he gonna be the one sitting on the Iron Throne? I mean, he killed it, and I say hats off to him, and his portrayal was just you couldn't ask for better. Who else did I skip over on purpose? I skipped over Theon Greyjoy, Alfie Allen. I don't know. I think he's so close to my number one that it's so hard. He killed Theon Greyjoy. He knocked it out of the park. And Alfie Allen deserves any award he's presented with, because he was believable all the way down to the very end, when his character sacrificed himself to do one last heroic deed, and even all through the Reek episodes, he nailed it. Which leads me to
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Continue.
Okay, there's two left, and then I'm wrapping up. So if you gotta go,
no. I was gonna give you the name that ties all these actors together.
Okay, let me hit these last two, and then we'll come back, and then I'll let you do that, because that's perfect. I didn't. Okay, so Ramsay Bolton, the actor behind him, I don't have in front of me, but he was as dangerous and scary as you could imagine an evil villain being. But it really goes back to season 1, season 2, the role of Jack Gleason, who everyone wanted him to die, but they didn't want him to go anywhere. And all the actors I just read and talked about, I don't know if somebody played a character better than Jack Gleason played his character. And it was just a ridiculous portrayal of Joffrey Baratheon. He was hated so much that the actor quit acting because he didn't like the feeling. He wanted to live his life without feeling hated. He wanted to do other things, because he just didn't like that concept that he was actually hated in real life because of a character he played. But he did it as good as you could have imagined and asked for. So I would say that my two are the two best portrayal of the villains in the show, the side villains I call them. But Ramsay Bolton and Joffrey Baratheon, I think that they were just amazing. So I know I just read off a whole list of names, and I think every one of them deserves mention, including Gendry. I don't even know what the right way to say it is, but I think that he also deserves it. Robert Baratheon, honorable mention. Ned Stark, honorable mention. All these guys. And it's just, you can't pick an episode and say they all sucked. There was no episode where the acting was bad. And so I leave you with that. And Frank, I'd like to hear who you say brings this all together, because
so one of the fan-run websites that I follow is Watchers on the Wall, and they have a saying on there called "In Nina Gold We Trust." Nina Gold is the casting director for Game of Thrones.
Wow.
And since she's hired all these guys and found all these guys, every season of Game of Thrones she's been nominated for an Emmy, and she's won twice.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, she should win every year, because, and she's been working since 97. She does a lot of European stuff, although now she's into the Star Wars. She's been bought up by them, but the fact that she can find, like you said, all these people that you've named and tie them into when they release who's in the next season, and you're like, wait, this guy got hired to do this, and then when you watch them act, you're like, yep, that was a good choice. There's never been an actor put into a role where you're like, wow, she really screwed the pooch on this one. Nina Gold is the all-star as it relates to building this cast, and I think that she deserves every award that she can get.
100%. I've never seen a cast as solid as that. And even when you look at casts like The Wire and Breaking Bad and stuff, it's like there's so many pieces to the puzzle here, and almost all the way down the line. The only ones, Euron Greyjoy, even, he played the part he was asked to play, but not the part that we all hoped he played. He did a good job too playing that version of Euron. So thoughts, Jerry, on what we just kind of went over, and any final casting considerations or anything?
Yeah, I really am just I'm thinking ahead now. It kind of just left me wanting more. I've obviously heard that HBO has something in the works now for the prequels, which I guess takes place some thousands of years before the events that we just witnessed. And this takes us back to the beginning, like the start of the White Walkers and all that kind of stuff. So just kind of looking forward to what else is out there for us. But I hear that Naomi Watts is going to be the lead. And what's to come.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to those. Jeremy?
Well, you brought up the 90s, and you brought up what George R. Martin said about Peter Dinklage's portrayal of Tyrion. And so I've got my favorite Game of Thrones story. And I'll leave you with this for me, because it's probably my last relevant chance to tell this story. In 1999, my friend Matt came down the hall in college, handed me the first 2 books of this series, and said, read these books. We've got to graduate from college. We've got to find this guy, George Martin, and we've got to convince him to let us make a television show out of this series. And we have to get HBO on board. There's no other place that'll let us do it right. It's got to be done on HBO. And the key to the entire thing is getting an actor named Peter Dinklage to play the part of Tyrion.
Wow.
And I shit you not, my friend Matt, that was the conversation he had to me when he handed me a Game of Thrones before I ever read the first page. And bless his heart, he just did not get into the business fast enough and get successful enough to be the one to get that meeting with George Martin, or we would be millionaires.
You'd be the ones at the Target, why did you pick this?
There'd be so many memes about me.
So
I believe you would have done 20 seasons, Jeremy.
I would have done 30 seasons. I would have ridden Matt's coattails on every decision. You knew what that needed to happen with this thing.
So I want to move real quick into and wrap it up with what's next. Jeremy, there's a TV show that I thought might interest you, and you've probably already heard about it, but Secession on HBO. They did a lot of previews for that, and it was interesting to see because it was about I think it was a news station or something, or a TV station or a company, and the kids under the owner, they kind of want to figure out who's going to take over the business once he dies, and they start making decisions, and it's got a pretty good cast, or looks to be a pretty good cast. Any shows like that, or any other shows on your radar? This is for anybody. Open topic.
Yeah, I don't know about Secession for me personally. I have a tough time with shows that are about literally business secession. And there's actually a pretty robust genre of that on television the last 5 years. But look, I'm with the other guy. I'm definitely looking forward to Stranger Things on July 4th. I mean, have they ever let us down? The answer is no, not yet. And until they do, I don't want to see a meme about it.
Fair enough. Jerry, what are you thinking?
I have not much to add to this at this point. I am really just I'm glad that I gave into the rumblings. A few years back. This typically is not my genre, so I was kind of stepping outside of my comfort zone when I started watching this, but much to my delight, man. So I can't wait for what's next.
Awesome. And Frank, what are you looking forward to?
First, I want to apologize to Jeremy, who not soon after his friend told him to read the first book, brought it to me. He's like, "You like fantasy? Would you think to read this?" And back then, I was like, "I'm done with fantasy. I don't want to read any more of this. I don't need any more dragons." And I feel like I should have done it in '99. I didn't. I don't. I think I need a break from pop culture for a while. I'm not gonna. I mean, I'm looking forward to Stranger Things. I like that show. It's definitely in my wheelhouse as an 80s, an 80s takeoff kind of thing. But I don't see another program doing this where you get a bunch of people on a phone on a Monday to talk about, an 8-season show. The way we consume television now, we actually had this discussion a couple of days ago with my kids and with Lisa's sisters, and we're all watching different stuff, and we're in different times where it's like, oh, I'm only on season 2 of this, or I'm only on episode 1. You can't even discuss it. This is one of the few shows where if you didn't watch it Sunday night, you can't talk to anybody Monday morning. And I think that's probably going away after this.
That's a great point.
You hit the nail on the head, and I think I opened it up on this call about the backlog, and not to, toot my own horn here, but that's the point of our podcast. Yeah. It's just
that's
the concept.
Good point.
It's the concept. The concept that we all have our own backlogs. We all have our own things to do, whether the backlog is you got to rake the leaves in the garden and chop down a tree, or catch up on every season of Game of Thrones like Jeremy just did. And so we have to make time for what we love. And, I'll be the first to bug a lot of people and say, what about me? But I also have my own things. I'm doing a million things. I got a YouTube channel I'm pushing. I've got a Twitch thing that I'm about to start that I see a lot of potential in. I got the podcast. I got, 1,000 things going on. And sometimes it's hard to recognize that other people do too. But it's awesome when something like this can come and can bring everyone together, whether it's good or bad, whether we have different opinions about it. It's awesome to be able to stop and say, this was something that changed our lives. I mean, it's as silly as it is. It did. It made people stop what they were doing and change their lives to work around this show. And there's not many things that can do that. So hats off to George Martin. We can criticize him for not getting the books done yet. I think they'll be out next week, both of them. But
we'll see. If they are, we'll be back on another friggin'
That's
podcast.
Right. I'll pre-order on Amazon if there's a story tomorrow.
But the only thing I can equate this to, and only because it's a 3-on-1 situation here, is football and stuff like that. And if you're not aware, Jeremy and I are all Patriots fans, and so
I am shocked. I did not really. There's not
I'm
a
not
lot
getting
of
into
you guys.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
I'm glad you could find each other.
Just messing around. But no, really, like the camaraderie within a sports team's franchise or whatnot, but you still get the bad blood. This is a different situation where you got people coming up with ideas and concepts. You go online, there's theories and stories, and I listen to podcasts about this, and one of the ones I was listening to today, we're talking about this episode as if there's going to be another season. Like they were like, well, what do you think's going to happen next? What do you think's where is Arya going? And what do you think she's going to find over there? It's like they're getting into all this detail because they can't stop themselves from dreaming and thinking that there's going to be more, and there's not. This is it. This is over.
Well, I heard a fan theory today from somebody at work, and they brought up that line that Tyrion deliberately said, "Ask me again in 10 years."
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny if you think about it. What if, now this is not something I believe, but what if George Martin gave them these plot points, and he really does need 10 more years to finish these books, no matter what Barristan Selmy says. And the actual conspiracy is that they're taking 10 years off from the show in order to not spoil the actual ending, which has not happened yet.
Well, I'll be down for it.
And if you think that that's impossible, all I'm going to tell you is that David Lynch already did it with Twin Peaks, and he pulled it off with a 20-year gap, which they told you in the last episode will be back in 20 years. And people thought it was bullshit. And
I always thought that there would be an Ice Queen. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say no.
Yeah, true. But I always thought that this series would end with the Ice Queen or the Night Queen, and with Drogon taking Dany's body off. There is no finality there, other than the fact that she was bleeding when she was taken away. So you never know.
You never know. And actually, in 10 years when they come back, it turns out Lady Stoneheart's been around the whole time.
I'm down.
It all happened. Yeah, it all happened in the blue-eyed giant named Macumber.
Hey Kevin, let me say one thing, because you can cut this out if you want. I don't know, but I was thinking about it as you were talking there, in the spirit of what this podcast is for, as a backlog. You asked about television shows, and actually, when it comes to backlog type stuff, I really do have a good suggestion for you. There's a show that almost nobody has been watching for the last 2 years called Legion. It's on FX. and they will be coming back for a third and final season in a couple of weeks here, sometime in June. The final season of Legion comes up. So if you're looking for something that's on a backlog that you haven't tried and you need to fill a void, let me tell you something. It's a Marvel television show that doesn't follow any of the Marvel universe, but it's like an X-Men Mutants show.
I've seen the previews.
It's a Marvel story. It is a Marvel character. They just don't follow the universe. And let me tell you something. It is the trippiest, wildest, most creative show on television. And people are not watching it, but they should. And I always like to binge a show when I know that it's definitely. Oh, is somebody shaving ice? I don't know what's going on. I always love to binge a show when I know that like a final season is coming up, because there's no danger of I'm going to binge this and then they're not going to finish it. So we know you're going to get a conclusion. So if you're looking for something, you fill that void. Something that's on the backlog. If you probably haven't tried it, because I know not a lot of people have, but let me tell you something. Legion FX, give it a shot.
Well, I'm glad you made that suggestion, and I want to just cap this off with saying that my brother has never steered me wrong in a suggestion, and he's led me to some of the most amazing things. I remember back when I was real young now, it feels like, but he bought me the first season of 24. And he said, I don't know if you're going to like this. And I probably watched it 6 times, the whole thing beginning to end, and was enthralled with it. And ever since then, I go to Jeremy and I ask him, what are you watching? Because I know that whatever he's watching, if he's committed to it, it's going to be something that's worthwhile to me. So if he's saying Legion, it's on my list and it's moving up. If you haven't seen, I'm a big fan of these fantasy type things. I have to finish, it's on my backlog, but I have to finish Black Sails and Vikings, or catch up on Vikings. I don't even know where they're at yet, but that's what's next for me is to kind of finish up some of these shows that I really put a lot of time and effort into, but shows like Game of Thrones always took precedence. And so I'm glad that you were able to jump on and provide your insight and stuff like that, and also make that suggestion. Frank, you've always been awesome to talk to about this stuff, because you go so deep into the theories and the concepts and everything, and you always bring reason to the picture, whereas I throw it out the window. And so I'm so glad that you were able to make it as well, and I think your insight into what you've seen along the way is pretty dead on and very accurate. And thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks, Kev. Thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I if any of you are ever interested in coming back, like I said at the beginning, Jerry, this is, I think, your 3rd or 4th appearance here. And Jerry, there's just certain things that happen in life. And if you look at us both in pictures, you would never realize how far apart we really are. But Jerry is just randomly saying things and posting things or commenting on things that I say, how the hell are we so in tune on certain things? And so, Jerry, thank you for joining and providing your insight, but also thank you for being there every step of the way on this podcast for me. You've jumped in and provided assistance and dialogue and on a whole slew of things. And you never back down from it, and you're always willing to jump in and say, I'm here. And I really appreciate that as well. I look forward to having you on again in the future.
I appreciate you having me along for the ride, Kevin. It's always fun.
And if you guys don't know, Jerry is the voice of the intro. He does the intro to the backlog. So
I thought so.
Thank you for that as well.
It's always a good time laying that stuff down, man. Thank you for allowing me to.
Absolutely. And
if we're going around the table just to talk about who everybody thought did a good job on the podcast, I'll go next.
Well, I'm waiting for my praise, but we'll save that for another episode. It takes a while.
All right, never mind. Don't go to me.
Well, oh geez, one last burn. But no, thank you all for being here. You're welcome to share this if you want to get more listeners to tune in. If you don't want to and don't feel like it, don't worry about it. But if you could, it's definitely probably get a different set of people paying attention. Yeah, that's it. I guess that wraps up the 56th episode of the Backlog podcast, and this was an awesome one. Went a little long, and I'm glad it did because there's a lot of stuff to talk about. And we look forward to other conversations like this, other roundtables. They're always a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was free therapy for me, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. And that wraps up Game of Thrones in its entirety. You heard it here, probably not last and not first. Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. That's
Backlog
all right.
podcast. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
All right.
And
Thanks, Kev.
Peace.
recording
Thanks, guys.
ends
Bye.
now.